Well, you're good to
Hi,
go, T. You're on
everyone.
live.
There we go. There we go. I see us. We are live now. Welcome, everyone. Whoever's in the room, I'm excited for us to talk about this topic today. Hi, Nate. Welcome.
I'm so excited to be back. I feel like we're getting better and better at these live episodes. We got even like
Yes,
some cool borders on our live session, and you know,
we're
like
getting there. We're getting there.
I think so. I think so. I think
Yeah.
it's been it's like a new technical challenge for us, but we're learning and adapting.
It it's a new skill. I actually did a post this morning about building confidence with new things. So this is definitely a new skill that we are learning to do this live. We've got it down. We can do these podcasts when it's just us or just us and the guest. But I think when it's live, we've got different people jumping in. So really to say welcome as you are walking into the session today, taking some time out in your lunchtime to come and listen to us talk about a topic that I think is one of the big topics from a leadership perspective, talking about how do you make decisions when you don't have all the answers. And when I was putting the topic together, I was thinking about this, the how to preface it. Like, so the thought I had was leading through fog, because sometimes
Mm.
that's what it feels like. We're just trying to wade through the fog. Things are unclear, things are uncertain, and as leaders, we are expected to make decisions when we don't have all the answers. So it is our theme of the month is talking about how do we navigate change, and so we are linking this topic to that theme. And so when we think about leadership, we are leading through fog, and it's not always sunshine. So I think that for as we talk about this topic today and unpack some practical tools, I really want to pick your brain, Nate, because I know we've been navigating through some foggy times, and
Really foggy.
still and and still, and we are still here. We are alive and kicking, still smiling. So that's great. That's great. What are your thoughts on this topic before we jump into some practical tools?
I always get a really big kick out of like this subject when we were thinking about it. I think it's goes hand in hand with leadership because like I don't think leadership's always more difficult when you don't have all the answers and when like you're encountered with
Yeah.
really difficult scenarios and when things are
Yeah.
clear cut and the future, things are peachy, they're kind of easy to do as a leader. But
Yeah.
when it gets foggy and when you're unsure and there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of things to manage with your team internally and externally. And I think this is a topic that everyone listening will really resonate with because there is so much fog and uncertainty around the job market, around AI, around offshoring, profitability, tariffs, which have been announced by Donald Trump as a sweeping 15% now across the globe. So I feel like most people are
Yeah.
naturally in a state of fog. And I think I'm hoping with this episode we can help people like take a deep breath, find a way to
Yes.
wade through it. Um,
Yes.
so that's why I was
Yes.
excited to jump on for this topic.
Great. So there are four tools we're going to talk about. I'm just going to tease it now, and then we'll discuss later on and unpack it. So if you haven't heard about these things, please put a comment in the chat. Would love to see if who's heard of them, who hasn't heard of them. So the first one is the OODA loop or the OODA loop. Have you heard
Uda,
of that?
Uda
Yeah.
loop. No, never heard of that before in
No?
my life.
Okay. We're going to talk about the 70% rule. I'm sure you use it. You just probably haven't done it in a framework, but I'm sure you're using it. The second one's the 70% rule. The third one's the pre-mortem. I think we all are familiar with the post-mortem, but the pre-mortem. And then the tight, loose, tight leadership tool. Tight, loose, tight. So some interesting ones. So hopefully you're going to stay till the end because we're going to unpack all four. So I'd love for us to jump in, but something you've said that was very key. We need to understand why decision making feels hard in uncertainty. I think let's unpack that first, and then we go into the tools. Because if we don't start with the why, and then we just jump into tools, I think that connection doesn't get made. Yeah. So why do you think decision making feels hard in uncertainty?
Oh, um, I think it's just hard to get a clear picture of what, one, what the situation is. So maybe you're not getting all the information you need to make an educated decision. Two, I think
Yes.
the choices that you are receiving, it's unsure what the impact of those decisions will be because
Yeah.
you're operating in uncertainty in both the scenario and maybe what your
Yeah.
actions will take. And it's human nature to be uncomfortable when things
Agreed.
aren't stable or secure. I was having
Yeah.
a bit of a conversation. I was saying this last week about my partner because I seem to pull a lot of things into our personal relationship recently. But like human beings want stability. We want, shelter and a solid food source. And like, so
Yeah.
when things are not in our realm of control, it can drive up levels of anxiety and worry and nervousness. So um, I can totally appreciate that scenario is what makes people unsettled and worried. And I
Mm,
think our
mm,
reaction is to pull back
yeah.
inside and not make
Yeah.
a decision. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
that is the worst thing to do in those scenarios. Like, actually, you need to be driving action. And that's probably the
Yeah.
biggest thing: anxiety, fear, stress.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
immobilizers. And realistically, why we try to look at tools that you can use to get through it is to provide a structure for you to step into the next phase.
Absolutely. Great answer, great response. And I think for me, one of the things that I had to understand, and I keep coming back to the science of the brain, because when we understand the brain, then we're able to control those thoughts. Yeah. And so in that uncertain times, or when our brains actually need to make a decision, when we don't have all the answers, our brain actually goes into a threat mode, which is quite crazy. It's because it's looking for certainty, it's looking for clarity, it's looking for guarantees, but it's not coming, right? So
Mm.
that, but those guarantees don't come because in leadership we don't have those guarantees. We're actually making decisions based on the information we have in that moment. So what happens is there's an internal tension that gets created within the brain because we want the guarantee but we don't have it, we want the clarity but we don't have it, we want the certainty but we don't have it. And so as leaders, what starts happening is we start feeling like we slow. We actually feeling paralyzed because we are making decisions, or we're feeling overwhelmed, or we're feeling indecisive, we just can't make a decision. And I think something to call out here is that people are not incapable of making the decision. It's just our brains are just trying to protect us from making the wrong decision, because that's the fear we have, right? Is
Yeah.
making the wrong decision. And we've spoken about this before. That psychological not having the psychological safety to make a decision and know that you are supported.
And I think I've experienced this within teams where we have, especially people that we've coached or you've coached, the organization has coached, where there seems to be a lot of people pushing decisions further up the ladder because there is a fear
Yes.
of the outcome or the decision, which
Yes.
actually also slows
Yes.
down decision making, because that anxiety or that fear from indecision means,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, it is a level of politics within
Yeah.
companies to safeguard yourself and protect yourself, so you don't think about, can I actually take accountability and ownership of this decision? So I absolutely agree.
Yeah. I'd love for us to maybe pause for a little bit and just get everybody thinking about a question that I think we should all be asking ourselves when we are faced with trying to make a decision in uncertain times. So I'd love you to just take a moment to think about a current decision that you are avoiding or delaying. And what's the real fear that's underneath it? Is it making the wrong choice? Is it disappointing someone? Or is it losing control? So, making the wrong choice, disappointing someone, or losing control. Because this is really what keeps us from making the decisions. Yeah. So, we need to be able to understand. So, I'd say just take a moment, think about it. Is there a decision that you're avoiding or delaying at the moment? And what's the real reason or real fear underneath it? And if you're brave enough, please type it in the chat. We'd love to also hear from you. What are you thinking? Is there something that we could touch on during our podcast today?
Or if you have other tools while we go through the next tool, the first tool here, please add them in the comments. We'd love to share or share with each other, especially if you've heard or seen these before as well.
Exactly. Nice. Good. So while you're having a think, I'd really encourage you, write it down. So the question that I've asked you, write some of those thoughts down, because it just helps your brain to think it through. Yeah. So tool number one, as we promised, the how. These podcasts are really dedicated to how do I get out of this fog. The first one is the OODA loop that we were talking about. So OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, and then act. Yeah. So this is actually one of my favorite tools. I use it in some shape or form when I'm trying to make decisions. It's quite simple. It's quite quick to use. And the interesting thing is it actually comes from a military strategy. But it works very well in leadership. I think, if you go back into military or Marines and how people have been leading, that command and control style, there's certain elements that lend itself very well into the way we lead in terms from a servant leadership. So take things as in these little small doses. So the 4 steps, so let's maybe unpack that a little bit. The 4 steps. So the first step, observe. What is actually happening? Yeah, so we need to be stripping away assumptions and really sticking to the facts. And I think this is where a lot of our indecision comes from, because we're struggling with deciphering between the two, the assumptions versus the facts. Yeah. The second step is to orient yourself. So what does that mean? It means what patterns are emerging? What matters most right now? These are questions you should be asking yourself before you make a decision. This third step for me is the most critical one, is to actually decide. But there's a key piece here. We need to choose the next small step. The key here is small, not the next 5 steps, just the next one. Because this is where we also get lost in the fog. We're trying to make decisions for every eventuality, every risk. It's too much. Pick just what's the next small step. And then the 4th step is to act. So act means move. So move, try something. If it's not working, reevaluate. It can be an iterative process. It doesn't mean you've picked something, you've decided something, you've got to stick with it. And that's the beauty of the world we live in. We can test, fail forward, fail fast, try something, it doesn't work, try something else. So I'm sure you're using this tool, Nate.
Absolutely. I love a few things that you said, but I think the ability to decide on what the next step is, or progressing towards something where there's a lot of uncertainty, helps bring reassurance because there's a plan in place. So you were saying, observe, take in things around you, make sure you have enough information to make the most educated decision. You're not going to have all the answers, but there are ways that you can gather intel that allow you to make the best educated decision. When you then orient yourself, you're actually being able to make a decision based off of that data and decide what's the first step in the direction of getting it solved. And I like the reevaluate piece, because I think it is a trial and error. I mean, the more I get involved in this, in our decision making or helping businesses, you realize there is a trial period of moving the piece just a little bit more forward in the process, and then reevaluating to ensure that you're still making the right decision and moving quickly. And I think that's what I like around that, and that's why it's a loop. So that's an interesting adapt. And you said it came from military origins.
Yes, military origins. I think what I love, there's so many other things. The VUCA concept is also from the military, right? That we're living in this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. I think that what it does is they have brought structure in terms of how leaders need to lead, because they are in life and death situations. So they need simple concepts, quick thinking. They need to think on their feet. So if you think about the situations they find themselves in, they don't have the luxury of time. a lot in war situations, for
No.
example, or in tactical situations. They don't have that luxury of time. So these simple things, these simple tools actually help them make these decisions quite quickly, and really try something it's not working, reevaluate, assess. These things are happening in split seconds or in minutes. Yeah, it's not taking days and months and years. That's what we're talking about. So
I can
these
see how
micro
that would work
decisions, yeah,
in conflict, like, because obviously you
yeah,
can't solve everything. You can only solve what's in front
no,
of you or what the issues are, and kind of
yes,
try and progress through
yeah.
uncertainty. That's interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, very interesting. Because sometimes you use these tools and you don't understand where it came from or why. So I'm like a nerd like that, trying to understand
You love
where
an
it's come
acronym.
from.
Yeah.
I love an acronym. I love an acronym because I can remember it. That's why I love them. And so for me, I'm always trying to understand the why behind it and how is it really going to help me in when I'm in a pinch or when I'm in a situation where I need to make a quick decision. So hopefully this is serving some people out there. So if you've heard of this before, love to hear that. And again, I'd love for us to pause for a moment, because sometimes I feel we on information overload, and so we're very mindful of that on this time that we have together, not to just bombard you with everything, but for you to also just take some time to think through this episode with us today. What is a next small step you could take, even if the picture isn't clear for you today? So if there's a decision that you are sitting with and you're feeling overwhelmed by it, or you're feeling like, I don't have all the answers, I don't have all the puzzle pieces, ask yourself the question, what's the next small step you could take, even if the full picture isn't clear yet? So let that
Love that.
marinate for a moment, or just write the question down and take a bit of time, maybe this afternoon or tomorrow morning when you're a bit more fresh, to ask yourself that question. How can I as a leader help move and create momentum and not lose the momentum? Because I think that's what happens a lot, right? The leader gets paralyzed and then momentum's lost. And then it's harder to get the team motivated, come, let's go, because we just waited for like 2 weeks to make a decision. Yeah.
Great.
So that's something I'm always mindful of. You know, we don't have all the answers, but how do we keep the momentum going with these small steps?
Totally agree. I was just enjoying, sorry to be side noting. Doing a few messages because I was trying to engage with the public chat.
Oh,
Just kind of
good. Oh,
enjoying that we're
good.
doing this on a live episode. Human moment for a
Yeah.
second. Pause, reflect, have a human moment.
Absolutely. But it's good. We want these episodes to not feel rushed. I think we are
100%.
rushing from one thing to the next. We just like bombarding our minds with a whole lot of information. And I just wanted us to just take a moment in these live episodes to really just have those human moments and ask
Mm,
these questions and just pause and ask ourselves these questions that we may not be asking ourselves because we're just rushing from one thing to the next. So hopefully you all are finding these sessions are going to be like a stop, reflect, and pause moments, as you've just said,
like coaching
because
straight
we're
in the
not getting.
podcast, T.
Yeah,
Putting yourself to
exactly. I
work.
can't help it. I can't help
Free
it.
coaching, everyone. You're enjoying some free coaching hours right now. What
Absolutely.
you mentioned the 70% rule. I'm interested to learn a little bit more about that.
Great. Actually, you'll be interested to know that Jeff Bezos popularized this rule.
Interesting.
And it's so I actually did it in another webinar called From Chaos to Clarity, and we're doing that tomorrow. So, shameless plug for a webinar. It's a free webinar. So, if you haven't seen it, please go register. And we talk about the 70% rule there because I think it applies to so many different areas of our lives. So, basically, it says if you have 70% of the information you need, go. Because if you're waiting
Mm,
for 90 to 100%, you're actually moving too slowly. So 70% is good enough.
I really like that.
Yeah, I really like it too. It takes the pressure off you as a leader.
I think sometimes probably the biggest part that it picks up is sometimes we feel like we need too much information. I've said this the same when I'm training people in sales,
Mm,
or if you're going into a business development call. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, I need to know all this information before I can dive into
mm,
something that makes me a bit uncomfortable." And actually, you'll learn a lot by going through the motions or diving into that decision. And I think that's probably where it
yeah,
comes to. It's not to say be unprepared by not having enough information, because we talked about that in ODAP. I just think you
yeah,
can't be a perfectionist with every decision. If you were, things would take too
yeah,
long. We're picking a new supplier for an area of our business at the moment. If we really
yeah,
wanted to go across the whole market and hit 100% of everybody, we could
yeah,
understand it. However,
yeah.
realistically, we're not going to be able to do that. So please, I've got this much of information. I can make a decision, and that I've done enough
Yeah.
to make sure the decision I'm making is the right one.
Yeah. There's a quote around what you've just said that says the cost of waiting is often higher than the cost of making an imperfect decision.
Yes.
So, movement, momentum is far better than waiting and waiting and waiting. And actually, your competitor can come in and, swoop in and take on your clients because you were waiting too long, waiting for all the information. So, I think that's a key piece here on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has another quote that I really like. He might be he might
Mm.
be turning into a James Bond villain in the flesh, but besides that, he's got some lessons
Yeah.
to learn, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but he talks around I think we've talked around this, but the two-door decision. So he also
Mm.
says to people, if you have a decision to make and it's a two-door decision, meaning you can go through the door, make a mistake, and then it's very easy
Yeah.
to come back out and to go into door number two.
Yeah.
He's like, why are you waiting? Go for it, experiment,
Mm.
and then because the consequences are low for indecision
Yeah.
for the decision. So actually, you'd lean more on the rapid element of speed to get you to the solution.
Mm.
But if it's a
Mm.
one door decision, in which case it's going to be very difficult for you to then switch that decision process, or it's going to lock you into a year or multi-year contract, then yes, you need to slow down and take time to make that
Yeah.
decision. So I think that's kind of,
Great.
I love that quote
Yes.
from him as well. I
Yeah.
apply that a lot within our business decision making. Is it something that someone can learn from or get involved in, or we
Mm.
can make the mistake? Let's go for
Yeah.
it, because realistically,
Yeah.
we not 100% right that door could be right or
Yeah.
wrong. But if it's
Yeah.
something that's going to lock us in long term, we need to
Yeah.
reassess.
So basically assess, is it reversible or irreversible? And that helps
100%.
you make that decision. Love it. There's some very practical questions linked to this as well that you can ask yourself with the 70% rule. Do I have enough information to make a directionally correct decision? What would I do if I needed to decide today? And what's the smallest risk I can take to learn quickly? So just some guiding questions as well to help you.
I also
Good.
find that a lot of those things, when you don't know when we're talking about fog of decision making, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And if you view it as a learning moment anyway, I've made
Yeah.
plenty of decisions as a leader that have been mistakes, wrong supplier is different,
Yeah.
but I've made it with the information in front of me, and I've learned from the
Yeah.
experience that I then carry confidently into that next scenario. So you can only
Mm.
have so much
Mm.
fog sometimes.
Yeah.
You can wade through it a bit
Yeah.
just by action.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as promised, tool number 3, we all know about the postmortem. We do a postmortem after something fails. But have you heard of a premortem that can help you
Sounds very
predict
morbid,
failure?
this
I
tool.
know, right?
I feel like a detective.
It's
Post-mortem.
so it's more analyzing some of the risks. So pre-mortem
Mm.
is really looking at failure before it happens. So it's a risk assessment technically, right? So what you can do is imagine that your decision failed, right? So you imagining it hasn't failed yet. Now you can ask yourself, what went wrong? What did we ignore? Who wasn't consulted? And what early warning signs did we miss? Yeah.
Feels like
So
Captain
again, it's just
Hindsight.
trying to think it. Yeah, exactly, Captain.
Usually the person in a meeting that really upsets you, a client. Well, we should have done this. You're like, oh, come on.
Yeah,
But I understand
exactly.
it. it makes a lot of sense to hyperanalyze what were
prior.
the leading scenarios that got you to that scenario last time, so you can learn from it 100%.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is because there are a lot of people, right? There are people who are risk averse on your teams. There are people who are risk takers. So I think it's really bringing those two worlds together and seeing before we make a decision. And again, it comes back to that 70% rule. Is it reversible? Is it irreversible? When do we use these tools? For what types of decisions? There's different types of decisions that we'll use different rules for. So it's not applying all these tools for every decision you make. It's applying the right tool for the decision that you need to make. And so it's important that you have multiple tools so that you can act with speed and act with decisiveness.
Would you describe yourself as a risk taker or being risk averse?
Interesting one. I think it depends on the situation for me.
If you were to compare yourself to me, what do you think?
Definitely opposite. But I think we complement each other well.
Okay.
I think there are times where like you're like, okay, we need to pull back, or I'm like, yeah, let's go for it, let's go. And there's been instances like that, which I really like the way we work, because you come up with the idea and you're like, okay, let's go for it. What's the worst that can happen? Or be like, I think we should think this one through.
I think you're much
so
more
I think
riskier. I think you probably become riskier as we've worked together over the last 6 to 7 years for sure. But you obviously
I would say
jumped out to start a business, so there was going to be a level of you take risk, and you've moved all over as well. But I just thought it was funny because I feel like sometimes I'm very like I'm always wanting to change direction or take a risk on something, and I'm like, oh, I can read your facial expressions and
but for me, it's because my brain works with like analytics and information and facts, and once I understand it, it's much easier for me to get on board. But the first time I hear it, I need to first process and digest. So I think we were even having this conversation last week because you were saying something to me, and you're like, I don't know if you were on board with it. And I was like, well, I was just processing it, to be
still
honest.
processing. Yeah.
I was processing what you were saying. But I think it's important that we also understand as leaders how we are working with each other, how our brains work, what do each of us need, and how do we compromise and complement each other. I think those are the key pieces in a leadership team. So it's not only about you and how you make decisions, but also as a team, how are we making decisions as a team? I think that's a key piece that either unites a team or breaks a team. And so I think it's important that we all understand how we all work together. Yeah.
And then conscious that we've got 3 minutes left of people's lunch breaks, we hope. I don't know.
Yes.
If you're joining us on your lunch break, again, we're very excited to have you. This has been one of the coolest things we've put together. So thank you all for joining. We talked around tool number 4.
Yes, this one is an interesting one called tight, loose, tight leadership. So it's one of the simplest tools, I think, for leading teams through the fog. So we spoke a lot around you making decisions, but as a leader, as we said, we are leading teams. So what does it mean? So tight on the why and the outcome. I think that's, if we don't explain the why, I think we started this episode talking about the why. Why are we finding it difficult to make decisions? So when we are making a decision, if we're not clear on the why and the outcome, it's very difficult for people to get on board and get them motivated. Yeah. And then the loose piece is loose on the how. So because we want to give teams autonomy on how to figure out the best path. Because if we are very prescriptive as leaders, we actually then short circuit or cut off the creativity of our teams. So if we make a decision, we don't need to give the chapter and verse and every step on how we're going to execute it, because we actually want to give our teams that freedom to figure that out and autonomy to get there, because that's how they will grow and develop themselves. And then the tight again is on check-ins and accountability. The dreaded A word, but it's the word that keeps us all in check. the account to be accountable. So not micromanaging, but really just creating a simple structure where we are holding each other accountable, the leader and the team. And that's really just, again, I think helping to build confidence in the team. So helping teams understand we've made a decision, why did we make that decision, and really giving them that empowerment and flexibility or autonomy to bring that decision to life.
I love that. And it's funny, we just had a guest on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, Jonathan, and we talked around delegation and how actually the balance and balance between micromanagement and giving people free reign to accomplish things the way that they want, but giving that clear direction and what the purpose is. But I think the accountability element is so critical. I think so much time, you need deadlines, you need checkpoints, you need support, so that by the time you get to the end where you've delivered a project or you've delivered through an issue, your expectations haven't been missed. I think about it as the same of, we do that a lot for external clients with recruitment searches, leadership development projects, where I know you and me are very we update our clients on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And yes, it's important that you can also have those touch points internally with your team you are their customer in many aspects, or different departments are their customer. So that a level of tightness on the accountability, the check-ins, and making sure people have the right support and the right trust is so critical.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So hopefully, as you've stepped into this learning moment with us today, you walking away with something tangible, something valuable. I'd love to hear in the comments which one of these tools has stood out in your mind and that you would want to go and try after you walk out of here today. And it's good to reflect on these simple tools, but they can be very effective if you use them consistently and you use them in the right context, really, in the right situations. I think you will see value come out of it. It's also quick for you to pull out from the toolbox when you need it. So hopefully you go back and just reflect on these 4 areas. And something I'd love to leave you with is that you don't actually need perfect information to lead. You need courage, you need clarity, and you need to keep the momentum going as a leader.
Yeah, and I think there is almost sometimes a fear from leaders to be transparent to when they don't have all the answers. And actually, I would encourage that you don't always have to be that way too. There's a level of vulnerability that comes with uncertain situations. I think people are more comfortable when they're understanding, what are we driving towards? What's our next step? How are we going to go about encountering this scenario that we're all unaware of what the solution is? I have this conversation with, I know there's probably a few people from our team listening. And I'm in a position now where I'm like, look, you're in new territory for me. I don't know. You've got the extent of my knowledge in this particular area. So these tools are essential to use. Try something out, experiment, utilize the information you have to take a step forward and learn. And then if it's not the right door and the right information, turn around, pivot, and apply it to something new. The ability to pivot and make decisions and change and take all of these tools and implement them. They're just helping give you the right structure so that you can feel confident when you don't have all the answers. So I hope there's something that people have taken from this session. I think we probably could have done a podcast episode on each individually. Absolutely. But it's a nice summary episode. And please, I would encourage people to look it up online and get more information and, look at some of these acronyms, tools, and structures that can give you that support.
100%. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. An encouragement, go make one confident step, even if the fog hasn't cleared yet. That's something I'd love to encourage you with.
And I would say, not to do a shameless plug, but the whole purpose that we've got this incredible series that we've run out now every week. If you want to join us live, thank you for everyone who's joined us today. You can actually join us on YouTube or LinkedIn. We're going to be going live every Wednesday at 12 o'clock GMT over lunch breaks within the UK. If you're in Europe, maybe take a little bit of a later lunch break. If you're somewhere else in the world, feel free to get up early or change your mind. And if you're interested more in exploring this topic, or you want to hear more what Trench and her team are doing to help support teams or businesses through these sort of challenges, we have recently just launched Impel Connect, which is an online leadership development app. This is our topic. Navigating through change is the topic for March. We've just finished leading through authenticity, which was this month's topic. And next month, we'll be having 4 or 5 private webinars. We have a whole month's worth of content for you to check out, and a community that we're building online, and hope to keep elaborating on some of these topics. So if you enjoyed the session, we hope to see you again next week. If you really want more information, why not jump on our app? And if you ever want any more information from ERT, please feel free to reach out directly. Or if you want to ask questions or come on the show or have any upcoming stuff, email us at info@impeltalent.com.
Nice. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week.